Hey everybody, how's it going?
Hello,
Good.
Professor.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, are you ready for a fun-filled day of adventures in filmmaking?
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just got my camera too from the campus, so I'm ready.
All right, good to hear. All right, who wants more examples? Who wants one? Let's get one or two more examples, and then we're going to move on from this. We talked about blocking, right? We've been going through this whole idea of how important it is to block your camera, right? And block your actors, and that the dance between everything is one of those elements of cinema that makes it more compelling, makes it more interesting than just, I don't know, security camera footage or boring bad coverage. So I can't stress how much more important it is, this idea of us weaving this palette of visual images, whether it's moving the camera to create edits, moving the camera to create this blocking, moving the actors, or using editing to do the same thing. So we've looked at Spielberg with his blocking. We looked at who else did we look at? Oh my God, my brain! I got to reset my brain. Orson Welles. We looked at Orson Welles with his blocking. Remember that first shot, that one camera cool shot? So let's take a quick look at Quentin Tarantino. So Inglourious Basterds. If you haven't seen it, go. It's one of my favorite Tarantino films. So let's see what Quentin does. So Quentin basically is what I'm going to consider still part of old school Hollywood. So there's old school Hollywood, which is Spielberg, George Lucas, Quentin Tarantino. He's not quite as old as them, but he falls into that category where he loves the camera. He loves cinema and doing stuff with it. Go to Orson Welles. That's old cinema, old Hollywood. So let's see what Quentin does here. So Quentin is, he is a master. I'm not going to lie, man. He's one of those. He's going to fall down in that category of Spielberg's, Orson Welles, Spike Lee's, all of them as one of the all-time great American directors. No, he's only made how many films? 8, 9. He said he's going to quit at 9 or 10. He's got like one more to go, so he claims, and he's done. He says he wants to go out on a bang and not fall from grace. We'll see how that holds up. But he's been primarily delivering. Like, his movies are really, he is what I'd say a director's director, a filmmaker at heart. He's not just taking someone's script and trying to put it on the screen. Every ounce of his energy goes into these. If you listen to his interviews and him talking about the filmmaking process, you'll quickly realize that he is a master. He takes it at that Alfred Hitchcock level where every frame is agonized over, every move, every edit, every piece of dialogue, every aspect of filmmaking. He is micromanaging and shaping it and wielding it to his own. And you really can see it in his work, and you can see how his work progresses. Reservoir Dogs put him on the map, which were pretty amazing. What's the big one that really put him on the map? Anybody remember?
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Like, when that came out, we all were like flipping out, going, "Oh my God, I've never seen filmmaking, storytelling like this." So he's definitely one of the big dogs when it comes to delivering. And his movies aren't going to be big Hollywood movies. They're going to be his own. His movies are a Quentin Tarantino movie. So there's something interesting about that. David Lynch, his movies are very Lynch-like. Quentin Tarantino, they're very Quentin Tarantino. Spielberg, he kind of goes all over the place. He had his movies that have his mark. Maybe his mark still exists on these, but he's more what I'd say a Hollywood director, where he kind of makes things so that there's a budget for and what there's demand for. So he may do like serious dramas, Schindler's List. Look at that. He may do big action movies like Minority Report or War of the Worlds. What's he doing? What's the last one he did? He did Ready Player One. Big, huge movie, big, expensive movie. Pulled it off pretty good. I was actually surprised how well he did it. The book was pretty good. So here we go, Quentin Tarantino. doesn't go down that route. He carefully chooses what film he's going to make, what it's going to be. A lot of them, he had that whole revenge trilogy with Kill Bill 1, 2, Hateful Eight, so here we're going to take a look at Inglourious Bastards, the opening scene, one of the opening scenes in it. And so what I want you to do is think about the other examples that I've shown you, the two Spielberg movies. Take a look at here at not George Orwell, Orson Welles, how he works. And let's look at what Quentin does with the camera, how he moves the camera. Is he moving the camera physically, or is he relying more on editing? And what sets the pace here? So take a listen and a watch.
l'intérieur. Fermez la porte.
Julie, va me chercher de l'eau à la pompe pour que je me débarbouille. Et rentre à l'intérieur avec tes sœurs. Merci ma chérie. Maintenant tu rentres à l'intérieur avec tes sœurs. Tu cours pas, hein?
Das ist der Hof von Lapadit? Jawohl. Hermann, bis ich Sie wohl welch allein gelassen. Wie Sie wünschen, Robert. Est-ce la propriété de Perrier Lapadit?
Je suis Perrier Lapadit.
C'est un plaisir de vous rencontrer, monsieur Lapadit. Je suis le colonel SS Hans Landa.
Que puis-je faire pour vous?
J'espérais que vous m'inviteriez à entrer chez vous afin que nous puissions avoir une discussion.
Certainement. Après vous. Colonel Landa, voici ma famille.
Colonel SS Hans Landa, mademoiselle, à votre service. Les rumeurs qui circulent dans le village au sujet de votre famille sont tout à fait fondées. Monsieur Lapadit, vos filles sont toutes plus jolies les unes que les autres.
Merci. Je vous en prie. Asseyez-vous. Suzanne, tu veux bien aller chercher du vin pour le colonel?
Ah, mais non, merci beaucoup, monsieur Lapadit, pas de vin. Puisque nous sommes sur une exploitation laitière, je suppose, sans risque de me tromper, que vous avez du lait?
Oui,
Alors, je préfère du lait.
très bien.
Tu veux bien aller fermer la fenêtre, s'il te plaît?
Merci. monsieur. À votre famille et à vos vaches. Je dis bravo.
Merci.
Je vous en prie, venez me rejoindre à votre table.
Très bien.
Monsieur Lapadi, vu ce dont nous avons à discuter, il serait préférable de discuter en privé. Vous remarquerez que j'ai laissé mes hommes à l'extérieur. Si cela ne les offense pas, auriez-vous l'obligeance de demander à vos charmantes dames de sortir?
Vous avez raison. Charlotte, tu veux bien emmener tes sœurs dehors? Le colonel et moi, on a 2-3 mots à se dire.
Monsieur Lapadite, je suis au regret de vous informer que j'ai épuisé l'étendue de mon français. Continuer à le parler si peu convenablement ne ferait que me gêner. Cependant, je crois savoir que vous parlez un anglais tout à fait correct, n'est-ce pas?
Oui.
Ma foi, il se trouve que moi aussi. Puisque nous sommes ici chez vous, je vous demande la permission de passer à l'anglais pour le reste de la conversation.
Certainement.
Voilà.
Okay. So what do you see a little bit different about this than the other examples? How is the camera? How's the coverage? Is the camera moving around a lot?
Not much.
No, right?
Everything's really still.
Sorry, say it one more time.
Everything's really still, and it makes it feel a little more tense to me.
Yeah. So notice here in this scene, and not through all the scenes in his movies, but here, Quentin is using editing to move the camera around a lot more than everybody else. In fact, if we look at it, most of the shots are fairly static, right? So here's my question. If I've been hitting you guys the whole time about motion, we got to move the camera, moving the camera cinematic. A, is this incorrect? Or B, are we losing anything here?
I don't think we're losing anything.
No, not at all. And that's exactly the point. See, we don't have to always move the camera. We can do it in editing. We could do it on the dolly. We do it in one take. We can do it in a combination of moving the camera and static shots. The choice is up to you. Here, Quentin chose to specifically keep the camera mostly static. And he did this because he wanted this opening scene to feel like a postcard, to feel almost like a Norman Rockwell type of illustration, where it's just the beauty of absorbing the image. He almost wanted to conceive of this whole scene as photographs. And so that meant the camera really didn't need to move. There's a couple moments where the camera moves, but if we look here, look at this shot here. Look how it's framed. It's beautiful. Everything about it is well composed. And look at the lighting. The lighting's coming from the side. They shot this towards the end of the day. You can see look how long the shadows are. He spent his time setting up the shots and not necessarily moving them. And so I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong, because it's neither is the case. A lot of this comes to the style of you as a director or filmmaker. A lot of this comes to what's the style you're trying to make of the movie, right? So obviously he has a budget. Obviously he could do whatever he wants. So he's not using camera platforms like dollies and cranes because he can't afford it. He totally can afford it. He's making this as a creative choice not to move the camera. Now watch where he moves the camera. So here, beautiful wide shot, right? Here's the tilt, one little tilt into this wide, again, wide low angle shot of the father cutting, chopping wood. Still beautiful. Notice he's framing this thing. This is also a 240 letterbox. So everything is framed for that aspect ratio. Now look here, I think this is kind of cool. So most movies, most TV shows, when they reveal the antagonist, it's usually like a pretty good shot of them coming up. The villain first comes in. Look what they do here. I thought this was pretty clever. No music, right? And now we suddenly hear something. Look at the review. I mean, the reveal. She pulls back the clothes or the curtain or whatever it is, and we do a rack focus to them. And notice how small they are, how far away they are in the shot. It's very distant, right? We're still with these characters. And then the approach comes. We get cut back and forth. He gets down. Notice it's all fairly wide shots, right? Even the medium shots. Look how much information we're getting here in the frame. And this is one of the great things about shooting something in a wider aspect ratio like 240. 16:9 would probably give you like that, which is okay, which is better than 4:3, which is old school TV. But look how much more I get here. If I frame this for 16:9, look how I lose the house here. So there's something really beautiful about this aspect ratio. And you don't need to be super close up all the time. It's more about absorbing everything. So he sits down there, they come running. You could see, look at, there's a cut, right, on action, right? There you go. There's our first close-up right there. Another low angle, all this good stuff. Now we're finally getting a little bit closer, realizing what it might be. And now watch here. We don't even know who this is. Here's the first final move, camera move. This, our main antagonist here, we finally get to meet him at this point. But now look where they finally do a camera move. There you go. First tracking shot.
Je suis Parier Lapadite.
C'est un plaisir de vous rencontrer, Monsieur Lapadite.
Insert shot right there.
Je suis le colonel SS Hans Landa.
Que puis-je faire pour vous?
J'espérais que vous m'inviteriez à entrer chez vous.
So even here, look at the framing here. We've got over the shoulder of two of the daughters. We could see, let me pause it for a second. The window, we could see the Nazis parked there, so we know their presence is still here. The whole family is feeling the presence of the Nazis. They've been here before, even though it has this whole friendly vibe to it, right? There's definitely some undercurrents happening here. So notice how they frame them up, dead center there, cut across. Now we reversed it. So the other thing I want to point your attention to is the lighting in here. So what type of lighting is this?
Looks very dramatic, kind of like looks almost like an interrogation lighting.
Yeah, right. So here's the thing I want to bring to your attention. It looks, at first glance, if we go back before this shot when they're both sitting here, it's kind of natural lighting, right? It feels like we've got windows with light coming in here, light coming in over here. But look at the table. Watch when he sits down. There's a light source right on the top here coming down. Now, most houses, and I'm going to say particularly early 40s, late 30s farmhouses don't have skylights in them, right? They don't have directional light like this. So this is exactly what you were saying, Jeremiah, that they made the lighting like this so it feels like an interrogation, because that's what it is. He's getting ready to interrogate him, but in a very nice way, right? At first, and it's a game of cat and mouse. This whole opening scene, we only watched the very first couple minutes. This is a great, if you want to go Google it or go if you have the DVD or go watch it on Netflix. Such a good tension, a building of of the whole scene with what's the not the trauma, but the level of tension as it builds throughout the scene. And there's no violence that happens until the end. But so putting that light down that way kind of gives us that idea that it's an interrogation. And so the point I'm trying to make with it is that even though we're lighting a farmhouse, we're stepping outside from the movie, we're talking about behind the scenes. I'm going to light a farmhouse. I'm like, okay, well, farmhouses are usually lit by candlelight back in those days. There's sunlight coming in. So my lighting has to look like that, right? No, my lighting needs to look as whatever it needs for the moment, from the drama. So if putting a light straight down here on the table is going to add to the drama, add it to make it feel like an interrogation, then that's the right path to go. Even though it may technically not be normal, not be correct, because there wouldn't be a light, especially this type of intense light here. But for the scene, it really adds to it. It focuses everybody else around her. Look at how darker she is compared to them. Helps us, our eye, get directed to them. The dialogue also is going to help us get our eye directed. But these things here, my point is that when we look at good lighting, and I know we're not really going to spend a lot of time in lighting. In fact, we're going to barely spend any time talking about lighting in this class because we don't have the time or the ability. That's in the advanced class that I offer, which will go more into lighting. But besides that shameless plug, anyway, lighting is about, manipulating us. So if I'm going to light something, I don't want to light it so it looks normal, right? Because when we go to the movies, why do we go to the movies? Do we go to the movies to just see what reality is all about? No, right? We want to escape reality. So if it feels a little unnatural or surreal, the better, in my opinion, because it feels more like an experience that I want to see on a screen. Now, granted, there's plenty of movies out there that try to stay as much natural lighting as possible, but don't try to modify it. And that's been for a while, a style. And there's nothing wrong with that style. But for stuff like this, drama, and Quentin Tarantino particularly, because he has a love of old Hollywood. So you see it in his movies. You see it in the lighting, in the pacing. Look at the pacing of this opening scene. It's very long, right? And does it feel boring? Not really, right? So it's working. So he has an homage to that type of filmmaking, and you can feel it and see it in most of his movies. Specifically in this one, at least in the beginning of this movie. So even Spielberg, if you go back and look at Spielberg's work in the 80s, he's got this, there was this thing called 80s Hollywood lighting, where there's lots of backlight. Everything felt kind of surreal and magical. It was all done intentional. It wasn't just because of the lighting limitations of the lighting. That's what they chose to do because they wanted to pull people out of the reality of life. They wanted it to feel extra special, this magical feel to it. And so lighting can do that. Blocking can do that. And so as filmmakers, we want to realize that owning the world, modifying it, shaping every aspect of it to what we're doing, the story we're trying to tell, is very important. You may have no budget and go, okay, well, I can't afford lighting, so I'm going to go natural lighting. Okay, great. But I'm sure there's some way you could tweak the lighting, even with the household appliances, the lights that are there, to enhance it. Or you can get a couple light panels and use those to enhance whatever is there. Even when we're doing scenes on stuff that I work on, and we're trying to stay natural lighting, I'm still enhancing it. I'm still doing something to give it that little extra spark, that little extra magical feel to it. And so that's kind of coming here. And so my whole point about Quentin Tarantino right here, showing him, is that we've basically looked at a couple different things. We've looked at that first shot, doing everything in one take and letting the characters just block it out, and the camera kind of follows them or moves around with them. That works, and it worked, right? It was, when we looked at Citizen Kane, that still felt cinematic, right? It felt like good storytelling. Spielberg, with those two scenes with Close Encounters, the camera moved around, and also Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, both the actor and the camera were moving around. So it was a lot of blocking with the actors, but then the camera is moving around too. That equally works. Here, we're talking about more about the actors moving around and editing and more cuts. So here, I'm not moving the camera as much, but I have way more edits, a lot more edits here that I'm cutting back and forth into. And so I hope when you guys see all this stuff that you realize that it's just different ways that I can approach this. How do I want to do the coverage? Do I want in camera or do I want to do it in editing? Both ways work. And it boils down to your style, what you want to accomplish here. Now, I will say that when you do it this way, it's going to take more time. Well, I take it back. It's not going to take more time. They're both going to take the same amount of time, but it's more doable when you don't have a budget. So here, what do I need? I pretty much just need a tripod. If I got a tripod, I paint beautiful images and I block the actors out perfectly in it. I don't have to have a lot of dollies or cranes or any of that stuff and still make it work. But the trade-off is I have to have a lot more shots to be able to pull it off. So if we actually ran all three of these clips at the same time and started counting how many edits, how many shots there were, in the scene, well, the first one has really two, right? Orson Welles has 2 shots in his first, Citizen Kane. Spielberg in Close Encounters had, maybe 15, maybe 20, I think. Raiders had even more. And then here, we're going to have the most because of the coverage. So it all balances out in time. But here, that's just using a tripod, I can still get that cinematic feel. I can bring the audience's perspective all over the place, but not have to set up all these big dollies and stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the whole process here. So the way it's going to work on set is we're going to block first. So the director is usually going to determine blocking during rehearsal. It's going to tell the actors where they should move for the proper dramatic effect. They're going to ensure sight lines for cameras and work with the lighting design of the scene. Each scene is usually blocked as a unit, after which the director will move on to the next scene. The positioning of the actors on stage in one scene will usually affect the possibilities for subsequent positioning unless the stage is cleared between scenes. So basically, we'll talk about that in a second. So blocking is an essential part of rehearsal because in doing it, will speed up principal photography as the actors and camera operators know how they move on set. So I might have talked about it before in class, but I'm going to repeat it because it's important. Here's the process: block, light, shoot your scene. When you're done, you move on to the next scene, you block, you light, and then you shoot. So a lot of times people mess that up. They go, all right, we're just going to light the scene and then block it and shoot it. But then you just wasted all this time, right? Because I only want to light where the actors are going to be. So if I don't know where they're going to be, how can I light it? And so if I light something and then the actors go someplace else, I may have to relight it. And guess what I've just done? I just wasted time. And if I waste time, what else do I waste?
Money.
Money, yes. So the way it usually works is we step into a scene. Now, again, actors have done table reads, maybe have rehearsed if it's a complicated scene before. Fight scenes, usually we block it out and rehearse for weeks at a time. But we're walking into a scene. The first thing we're going to do is run the scene. So that means the actors are going to find their marks. We're going to talk, okay, you're going to start and come into the room over there from that doorway. You're going to be standing at this chair over here, and then you guys are going to meet and have a conversation. All right, let's see it. And so then the director will call action. The actors will walk in and do it. They'll do their whole thing. Us as the crew will sit there and watch. The keys will sit there and watch because as the DP, I want to know where the camera should go. I'm starting to process where those eye lines, those lines for the camera are going to be. And also the gaffer is going to be there with me, starting to look around and think of where can I put my lights? What do I need to do here? So none of that processing can happen if we don't see what the actors are doing. So if you break the order and you say, okay, well, we're just going to you guys just light this and then we'll shoot it later, well, you're going to have that problem. So we want to kind of keep to this whole thing. So once you get it streamlined, it becomes like a machine. So usually the director is going to walk the locations in the morning and have an idea what he or she wants to do. So she's going to sit there and go, okay, I think this is where the action is going to take place here. I think that and there. and come up with a game plan. And here we're talking about low budget stuff. If we're just, we have an idea in our head, we've kind of storyboarded this thing out, but now I'm taking those storyboards and I'm looking in the real environment and seeing how well they match, because sometimes they don't match. And so a good example is you may storyboard an idea out that you want to scene out that you want to do, but you don't know the location yet. And you might think, well, I think they're going to start on the left side of the screen, come in a door, walk over to the right. And then when you get on the location, the door is on the right-hand side. So now you've got to reverse your action that you saw in your head. So not a big deal. And yeah, the storyboards are still a help because they help you visualize, but now I'm just going to reverse my action. So even if you completely storyboard the whole place out, even if you already went to the locations, found the locations, scouted them out, blocked them out ahead of time, it's always good to block it out with the actors, because this is where we're going to get the pacing. So if we need to figure out where focus is and set focus marks, if I'm going to move the camera, or even if the camera is going to be static on a tripod, I want to set it up. I want to be able to see what it's going to look like and have a good idea of what's going to happen. And also maybe what I thought it was going to be may turn out to be something different. So that's all going to be revealed in the blocking. So when we get caught up and we start rushing, a lot of times, we have to remind the producers and the director that, hey, we got to block this out. Remember, if you don't block it, we can't do anything. We're going to make mistakes. So blocking, the very first thing, is super important. Even if you only get one pass of blocking just to get a feel for it, that's all you need to see. And that's all your keys are going to need, your heads of your departments. So if I could see where the action is going, then boom, I can talk with the gaffer and we can figure out where to put the lights. I can tell the camera department where to put the camera for the first shot and have this all figured out. And then, so the actors are going to come in, they're going to rehearse a couple times. Then they're going to go to makeup. When they go to makeup, that's when the lighting is going to come in and light. If we need a dolly shot here, well, we're going to drop the dolly track here. As they're getting ready in wardrobe and hair and makeup, we're setting up. And so by the time they're done with that, we should be done too. And now they're going to come in and do last looks, and then we're going to shoot. So we basically block it out. Maybe we do one scene at a time. If it's a big scene, if it's a multiple scenes, maybe we'll walk through a couple scenes and block them out. And this way the crew can get a leapfrog ahead. The more heads up you can give to your crew, the better success rate you're going to have, because that gives them more time to jump ahead. So a lot of times when I'm doing, these shows like in Ice Cold Blood, where we have 50 setups a day, we're going to walk the whole place in the morning, the locations, and map them out and try to come up with a rough game plan of what coverage is going to be. And then I can talk to the lighting crew about lighting. And then as we light the first scene, set it up, they could split off and start lighting and getting all the other scenes going and getting going. And that's going to allow us to keep the schedule going. And the schedule, is always important, but it's even more important when you have no money, especially if you're super low budget. Even if you have friends helping you do a freebie, you want to get done as quick and efficient as possible and take up the least amount of time from people. Even if they've committed, they're giving you a 12-hour day, you want to get everything done you can get done in that 12-hour day, because nobody wants to come back again for free. Or if you say we're doing 2 days, but then you're like, oh man, we're not getting done in time. Can you come for 2 more days? So a total of 4 days for free. What are your friends going to be like when you ask for that? They're going to be like, oh God, man, why did I agree to this? So blocking is going to help you do that. So in a sense, by blocking it out, we are going to speed up principal photography. Actors know their marks, camera operators know it. Everybody's on page with it. If you just say, hey, we're just going to wing it, guess what? You're not going to make your schedule. I showed you a little bit about it before, blocking diagrams. So Shot Designer, we used it during the 360 thing. Remember I showed you that? So I'm not going to go into detail because we spent a little bit of time on that. Anything that you can do to help block it out is going to be mission critical to the game. So Shot Designer is a great one to use. A piece of paper and a pencil is great to use. Doesn't matter what you got, you want to block it out. So I use this one, but I don't always use it. It depends what we're doing. If I've got time to sit down and block the shot out, and then I'm going to do it. So if I'm doing a short and I've got a couple weeks of pre-production, I'm going to crack out the Shot Designer and start blocking all of my shots out so I get a feel for it. If I don't have that time and we're just on set, well, we may do it on a piece of paper. And I'll tell you one quick story. I was shooting this movie, and we had all these fight scenes in it, and we had the final finale of the movie. We were shooting this day, one day, and in the morning, the director comes up to me. He's like, "Man, I don't like the blocking. It just sucks. I'm not happy at all with what we came up with." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "I don't know he's like, "I'm trying to figure out what to do." And like literally, we're supposed to start shooting in an hour. And what we ended up doing was, I said, we decided, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we just stand down the crew for a couple hours, and why don't we just reblock the whole scene, redo the whole fight sequence, reblock it, we actually had someone who was a pretty good, storyboard artist with us. And so we redrew the storyboards because it was a fairly complex scene, and I needed to have the storyboards and the blocking diagrams, because if I didn't have them, it was totally going to be a mess when they edit it. The continuity was going to be off completely. So instead of worrying about the schedule and going, "Oh man, let's just wing it and we'll make it happen," we stopped down for a couple hours, literally drew out all the storyboards, put them up on a big, huge poster board on a wall so that we had it, and then we went and shot the day. And yeah, we went into overtime that day, but in the end, it paid off, because instead of just winging it, it was the end of the movie, the climax, the most important part of the movie, and we didn't F it up because we just stepped back and said, "Wait a second, we can't wing this. I know you're not happy with what we did, but if we just wing it, we're going to be screwed." So by taking that sacrifice and telling everybody, "Okay, take a couple hours, we're going to spend a couple of hours convincing the producers that was the way to go," saved the end of the movie from being a total disaster. So could be doing this using a computer software, could be on the back of a cocktail napkin, could be in your paper, whatever way you want to do it. Try to block stuff out. The more complicated it is, the better off you are blocking it. We do it. I know everybody, every big producers, directors, everybody does it. Barely anybody sitting there going in their head winging it. And again, the only exception to the rule would be documentary work, reality work, because you don't have that luxury. You may make a quick game plan on a napkin, and that's about it. And you're relying on the camera operators to be able to keep the lines going and everything. But that's stressful, and that always doesn't pay off, because lots of times when you look at that stuff, you can feel it doesn't have the fate. It's not looking like this Quentin Tarantino scene we just shot, right? We looked at, right? So if you want that type of look, that feel from your work, you got to really put the time into pre-production. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's the truth. So again, shot designer here. I'll play this real quick. This kind of breaks it down a little bit more. The links are in there. He's going to do a little bit more of a detailed run on how about this software and what's good about it. So just listen to this for 1 minute.
Hey everybody, this is Per Holmes, and I want to show you something that I think is pretty amazing, which is the new Hollywood Camera Work app called Shot Designer. Shot Designer is a new kind of tool for directors and DPs that makes camera blocking ridiculously easy and fast. It brings together a camera diagram that almost makes itself, a shot list that almost writes itself. It animates your cameras and characters in real time so you can pre-visualize the rhythm of a scene. And it includes a director's viewfinder using your device camera. Shot Designer also has a built-in set designer for making floor plans, and a lighting designer now that we're at it. And it comes preloaded with all kinds of ready-made camera plots for all kinds of situations. Shot Designer runs on all your devices, both iOS and Android. It runs on your Mac or PC, and it runs great on your phone too. I call this pocket blocking.
Wow, look how small that phone
But
is.
the best part is that Shot Designer is free to use on a single scene at a time. And then the $19.99 Pro version includes file management, includes a free Mac and PC version, sharing and exporting, and we're working on sync and collaboration. So go ahead and download it now. The iPad and iPhone versions are on the App Store. The Android versions are on Google Play and Amazon, and there's a direct Android installer as well on our website, along with the Mac and PC versions. I hope you'll enjoy it.
Hi, thank you very much. So check it out, if you want to take advantage of that. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. again, any tools you can use to get your pre-production going is pretty important. Any questions about that? Thoughts about that?
Pretty popular apps that people use now? Like that's pretty prevalent?
I've used it for years. I mean, this has been around. I've been using it for at least 5-6 years. So I know some people use it. I do. It's fairly inexpensive for what it does, so it's worthwhile of it. I mean, the other one I talked about was FrameForge, which is the more expensive, more elaborate. But all these tools have different purposes, and depending on the situation. So FrameForge is when I'm gonna have time to. If I have like extended time to do pre-production, I'm going to do it in FrameForge because I can really dial in all my shots and see it on my computer. If I don't have that luxury, then I'm going to do it here in ShotMaker. And I may actually do FrameForge. I may do both at the same time, where I'm using ShotMaker to see the lines and everything and then translating it into there, or vice versa. So I think everybody has a different way they work. Some people just use Maya. Some people use different, applications to do it. And so I think at the end, it's not about which tool do I need to buy. It's more about what's the workflow that I'm going to create for myself that I'm going to use. And that's the best one. The one that you're going to use is the one that is the best to have. Because if you spend the money, let's say I got the student, edition of FrameForge, so I paid $300 for it instead of $600, and it's going to take me 6 months to learn it. I don't know. I'm not going to do that. If you're not going to use the tool and you spend all that money on it, then it's a waste. So like FrameForge, you got to put the time and energy to learn how to use it properly to maximize what it's capable of doing. So something like here, ShotMaker, you could learn it in an hour or two. You could sit down and figure out all the settings on it, and all the options it has, and get comfortable with it maybe after a couple of productions, and then boom, you've got a tool here that's really handy. Or dropping down a level, you can just draw it out on paper. Everybody has their own way of working, so that's for each one of you to figure out. The only thing I would say is just find something that works. Any more questions about blocking and what we've talked about the last day and a bit?
Well, actually, I did. When you were talking about the shot designer, one of the things I had noticed was one camera was following one actor, and then it was like a camera on each actor. Is that how it normally works on the set? Like a camera will be assigned to one actor to follow them, or is that just like an example that you were showing for that one scene? Because it was in some of the scenes, but not all of them.
It all depends. So again, I'm going to go back to Quentin Tarantino. Pretty much does single camera coverage. And why does he do that? Because he's so meticulous about his frame that he doesn't want to compromise. So when you have multiple cameras going at once, there's a trade-off. So let's just say, for sake of argument, I have two people here, right? One here and one here, and I want to do cross coverage like this. Well, the lighting, one side's going to have worse lighting than the other because I need to light for each angle. So if I have two angles going this way, then that means the lighting is not going to be perfect for both angles. One angle is going to not be as good. So if I'm doing stuff like sitcoms where I need to be in front of a live audience and get it all on the fly, I'm going to compromise on that. But if I'm, Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, or, pick, any of these guys that are super meticulous about their shots and their coverage, then I may not want to compromise that. I may want to have the camera doing think of that Orson Welles shot, right? With a one take on the camera. Could they have slipped another camera in there and got that coverage? Had it work as good? Probably not. So some companies, like if you think about comedies, the lighting and the blocking is not that important, because what's important in a comedy for the audience?
The jokes, the timing.
The jokes, yeah, the timing. So when you look at a comedy, you're like, okay, well, guess what? In a comedy, I'm going to stick to triangle coverage. I'm not going to do any real super fancy camera moves, because it's not about the camera. It's not about the editing. It's all about the jokes and the timing and the punchline. So I'm not going to jeopardize that. So I may take 3 cameras and shoot it. The lighting may be flatter, because I don't care, because no one's going to laugh harder or less with the lighting. It's all about the jokes. So there I might do multiple camera angles and then not worry about the lighting. I may do, Steven Sonnenberg basically uses multiple cameras when he shoots, but he does it very different than everybody else. Instead of doing this triangle coverage and compromising cameras, he'll shoot out one angle and he'll put a camera where he wants it, and he'll put the other camera there. And if the other camera is in the shot of the other camera, he does not care. And you're like, well, why wouldn't he care? Because he goes and removes them all later on in post. So anything that's in the way of the one angle, he doesn't care. He'll fix it in post. And that's his workflow, and it works. So what does he get? He gets more angles on his coverage, better performances. But the trade-off is he spends way more time in post fixing all the mistakes, getting rid of all the cameras that are in the shots, or the tripods, or the C-stands or flags, or whatever it is. So that's his way of working. Quentin Tarantino, he's going to paint each picture single on one camera, shoot that angle, reset the camera, shoot again, reset, shoot again, because he wants the control. He literally wants to be looking over the lens and seeing the performance as it happens. If I've got two angles going on at once and I'm the director, I can't see what one of those cameras is doing. So how much do you have control over your world? How much control do you want? Dictates single camera, multi-camera. That kind of makes sense?
Yes.
So some of these, like in that shot maker, they're just saying, okay, here's the angle, one angle. When you see all those cameras up, that doesn't mean they're all happening at once. That just shows you different positions that are happening. So one may track with it. Maybe they'll do two camera coverage. It all depends. It depends what type of filmmaker you are. Like for me, I prefer single camera, but now I've been gravitating towards multi-camera. But instead of having two angles covered, I'll stack the cameras. I'll have a wide shot here, and then next to it, I'll put the close-up, and I'll shoot those two out at one time. And this way, I'm only lighting for one angle, and I can pretty much get both those cameras to look pretty good. Maybe not super hyper perfect like Quentin Tarantino would want, but for the level of work that I'm doing, that's pretty acceptable. So these are all things, as you develop your skills as a filmmaker, you'll decide. And the worst is like producers, and I've worked with these people in the past where they're just like, I don't care. Let's just put 5 cameras on and shoot it. Who cares? I don't care about the lighting. Let's just shoot it. I don't care if I don't have 5 operators. Let's lock a camera off, give the PA a camera, give everybody a camera and shoot. Sure, you get a ton of coverage, but guess what your coverage looks like? Inconsistent, can be crap. And so if you're doing a reality show, it might be fine, right? No one's going to notice. Trying to get it in a film festival, maybe people will probably notice. It's something to think about. Any other questions? Make sense?
So when they went from the field into the house, it was the same camera. It was only one, or do you think from that part right there it was like multiple, and then it was switched to one when they got to the house?
No, it's probably all single camera. If you look at the way it's shot, it's pretty much single camera. But look at each shot. Each shot was perfectly framed. Like even if they had multiple cameras, they didn't have a. He's spending so much time on each frame that they only want one camera to deal with. And that's it. And like every director is different. So Michael Bay, that guy will slam as many cameras as possible on his movies to get the coverage. And he needs to, because most of the time things are exploding or fighting or chasing, right? So he has no option. He has to have 10 cameras or as many. Even who's Ridley Scott now is doing multi-camera coverage. He's doing it more of a traditional triangle coverage to get everything. Stuff still looks good, still works, but that guy's been, a master for decades. And so he's gotten it dialed down. And in fact, they shoot on his stuff. He'll shoot 8K raw, and then he'll reframe and stuff in post on it to what he wants to do. So the technology is also changing and allowing us to do more and more. Now we're seeing Photoshop abilities in Premiere and what's their my brain's After Effects, where I can digitally easily remove stuff out of the frame, even if the camera's dollying or trucking or on a gimbal or on a drone. I can isolate things and take them out of the shot. That's the technology is so quickly changing that it's allowing us to change the way we make films. More cameras, not worrying so much about things getting caught in the frame. It's interesting times.